Welcome to henkisgaming. Guess who I am? Today we're gonna have a look at Diablo 4 graphic settings on PC, mainly texture quality, shadow quality, screen space, ambient occlusion and DLSS. I used to be a console gamer, then I got a PC, and for that reason I want to play on a 4K TV with a game that looks good and runs at a steady 60 FPS. Let's fire up Diablo. Okay. Okay, so Diablo 4 looks ominous already. Logging in. This is my sorceress, not that far in the game, level 32. Running great at the moment. I have a Ryzen 7700X with a GTX 4070 Ti, which has 12 gigs of VRAM. The system has 32 gigs of RAM. And I actually don't really have a problem running Diablo, only sometimes getting slowdowns, but I think those are more network related and not graphics related. Anyways, love the game, and it looks really great, I think. I don't know the exact PS5 settings, but I guess as long as it runs well and you and I think the game looks great. So we're going to see what settings we could run the game while still running okay, at least 60 FPS and looking good. Well, let's turn on MSI Afterburner output so we can actually measure, and let's get started. Starting with screen space reflections actually, just because I wondered if that would make a big impact. If you are near water, I think those are the only places where we have those reflections. Getting about 107 FPS with SSR, but about 122 without SSR. So that's about 14% win in frames. But I also like the reflections, so if your game runs okay near water, keep SSR set to on. Next, we'll have a look at texture quality. Running ultra settings at about 84 FPS currently. Let's see if we get an improvement with the lower texture set. But also let's have a look if it isn't terrible to look at. Settings to high, we see an improvement of about 3.5% in FPS. And graphically, I don't think it looks all that bad actually. Of course, not as good as Ultra, but nice. And also keep in mind that Diablo is quite heavy on the VRAM use. So if you have slowdowns and you run a system with about 8 gigs of VRAM, try setting the texture quality to high instead of Ultra. That may help with your slowdowns. Okay, going even lower, we do get about a 2% extra increase in FPS, but I don't think it looks that good anymore. And just because I'm curious, I'm going even lower to low, which gives us about the same performance win over the previous setting, but it looks like a blurry mess. Don't go lower than high, I would say. Looking at them side by side, you really see the difference, and those medium and low textures just don't look that great. Okay, so next up, shadow quality. On highest, and why isn't this called ultra, but doesn't matter, it looks nice of course, running at about 84 FPS since we're in the same location. Turning the quality to high, we do get a nice improvement in frames per second, and to be honest, I don't see such a big difference. The tree shadows are a little bit more flickery and a little less blurry, a little more blurry. But playing the game and not standing still, I think you would hardly notice. So yeah, that's okay. Going to 90 FPS, that's about a 7% increase in FPS, so that's nice. Going lower to medium, you start to notice that shadows get quite blurry, and this is only for about an extra 1% increase in frame rate, so I wouldn't go any lower than high. Turning this down even more, low shadow qualities, we get a 1%, an extra 1% increase in FPS, but the shadows are really blurry now, to the point you almost cannot make out parts of your own character's shadows, like the arms, and it's too blurry. Looking at these side by side, you can really see the differences quite well. Highest and high look great. Considering the performance win, I wouldn't go any lower than high. Find out which settings had a big performance impact. I switched off and on some settings and the whole bunch off and on, and one stood out from the rest, giving it quite a boost, and I really couldn't see any difference at all. And that is screen space ambient occlusion. To have a nice change of scenery, I traveled to the big city of Kiyobashat, and now we have the highest quality setting of SSAO running at about an 88 FPS. Turning it off, however, grants us an FPS boost of 17%, which is quite a lot, and I really don't see the difference at all between highest and off even. SSAO should be visible where there is depth or height, but yeah, I would expect it to see it near the walls or near in stones in the ground, but I don't see anything. If you notice the difference, please let me know what it is and where I should look. Now, putting the images side by side, I think I do notice some difference, for example in the puddle right before my sorceress, but I can't really make out what it exactly is, of course, SSAO, but I would suggest turning it off, especially if you're in need of extra frames. Now let's go to some moving actions. First off, ultra settings, no DLSS, getting between 85 and 90 FPS, so nothing to complain about, but let's just see how high we can get this counter. My optimized settings sounds a bit big for just turning shadow quality to high and turning SSAO off, but alright, now it runs about 103 to 115 FPS, so a bigger difference between low and high than just now, but okay. An improvement of at least 21%, so that's not too shabby. Now let's turn on DLSS. And we'll see if you have DLSS, turn it on. I don't really see any quality drawbacks, but the performance win is really impressive. And we're getting about 138 lowest to 147 highest FPS, so going from our optimized settings, that's an increase of about 34%. That's great. Let's check out DLSS performance, and we even get a bigger improvement, going 169 to 179 FPS, so that's another 22 performance increase over DLSS quality. So again, I don't see any difference in quality. Maybe the image is just not as sharp, but I can't really tell, not even by looking at them side by side as we see here. Time for me to set the game back to what I call my optimized settings, and I'll turn DLSS to quality, limit the frame rate to 60 FPS since my TV doesn't even support higher anyway. If you have DLSS, or if you don't have NVIDIA but you have AMD's FSR or you have Intel's XeSS, turn those on because they can have a huge performance improvement, and maybe you can leave settings to ultra and have a great experience. If you don't have these upscaling techniques available to you, turn down shadow quality to high, disable SSAO, and perhaps turn down your texture quality to high. But also, since DLSS or all these super sampling techniques basically render the game at a lower resolution, you should probably get the same boost in performance by just lowering your resolution. So if you don't have DLSS available. So perhaps try running at 1440p if you need those extra frames. It will help a lot and the game will probably still look great. That's it for now. Hope you found this, my first video insightful or somewhat entertaining? If you did, please leave a like and a comment just saying hi or whatever. And I'll hope to see you for a similar look at Jedi Survivor next time. Houdoe!